Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're here in D.C. during the final week before the holidays. Families back home are struggling with the increasing costs of groceries, housing affordability, natural disaster recovery, and health care. That's what we should be working on. Instead, what is Republican leadership scheduled this week? A bill that's routinely used in Congress to kill time on the floor and that will go nowhere in the Senate. H.R. 845, the Pet and Livestock Protection Act, would strip federal endangered species protection from gray wolves and block courts from reviewing that decision. This bill would force the Interior Department to reissue a 2020 Trump rule to delist the gray wolves that was struck down by a federal court in 2022. Why was it struck down? Because a Republican-appointed judge found it failed to use the best available science, didn't consider threats to wolves outside core populations, and ignored the needs across their entire range, all in violation of the Endangered Species Act. Instead of accepting that decision, this bill doubles down on bad science and even prevents courts from weighing in. If you're sure wolves have recovered, then there's no need to block judicial review. But that's not the case here. Instead, my colleagues want to remove endangered species protections because of politics instead of science, and that's not how the Endangered Species Act works. Wolves are an Endangered Species Act success story. Their population has increased from fewer than 1,000 animals to over 6,000 today, but recovery remains fragile and incomplete. Wildlife management should be based on science and collaboration. Our natural heritage and the health of our ecosystems are worth protecting for future generations. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this bill, and I'm looking forward to hearing further discussions from my colleagues. When my colleagues say an activist judge overturned this, it was a Republican-appointed judge that found, again, that it failed to use the best available science. I also want to say that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service just canceled the first ever nationwide gray wolf recovery plan, which was due this month. This comprehensive science-based plan would have finally provided a holistic approach to wolf recovery with all stakeholders at the table. This is the type of solution that the courts have been seeking after invalidating 5 of the 6 previous attempts to delist wolves. Unfortunately, H.R. 845 is part of a pattern. Instead of investing time and money into supporting proven paths of success, we're voting on far-reaching and unscientific proposals that don't actually solve the problem and won't make it into law. H.R. 845 would also fragment and make wolf management harder. I appreciate the words of my good friend from Wisconsin. I invite him to come to my district, where the manufacturers in my district are paying more for goods that they have to import to build things in the U.S., and my farmers and wine producers and exporters are losing their markets, so have less money to pay for the things where the prices have risen for their Thanksgiving, Christmas dinner, and presents. But you are welcome to come. Also, the issue with H.R. 45, after the 2020 delisting, in Wisconsin, 30% of its wolf population was killed in just 4 days. Idaho passed a law allowing the killing of up to 90% of wolves, including the pups. Montana removed wolf protections around Yellowstone, raising bag limits and expanded trapping, killing many of the beloved wolves that tourists travel from around the world to see. And the ecological consequences matter. Wolves are a keystone species critical to healthy ecosystems. When reintroduced to Yellowstone in 1995, they provided benefits throughout the entire ecosystem. Wolves changed elk behavior, allowing willows and aspens to recover. They brought back beaver, whose dams created habitats for fish, amphibians, and birds. One study found a 1,500% increase in the willow growth, surpassing 82% of tropic cascades in global analysis. And recently, we've seen evidence that wolves are helping to protect deer and elk populations from the spread of chronic wasting disease, a horrifying neurological disease rampaging through the states and causing real problems for hunters. The state of Oregon has worked to lead the way in wolf recovery, but there's only so much we can do if neighboring wolf populations are wiped out. We want to see recovery get the environmental benefits, and also make sure that our ranchers are compensated for any losses that occur. Now, look, I want to acknowledge that wolf livestock conflicts do happen, and ranchers deserve to be support when there's wolf problem. And we already have tools that work to address these conflicts, but this bill does nothing to improve them or to help our ranchers. H.R. 845 has no funding for conflict mitigation, no support for non-lethal deterrence, no additional compensation from losses. And if we want to delist wolves responsibly, we need to give Fish and Wildlife Service the resources and direction it needs to work collaboratively, respond to science, and invest in conflict prevention. H.R. 845 delists the gray wolf across the United States and blocks judicial review of the delisting. This is an anti-science bill that prioritizes politics ahead of species conservation. This bill will result in hundreds of unnecessary and indiscriminate wolf kills while doing very little to address the legitimate conflicts between some wolves and livestock, and I'll work with anyone on addressing those legitimate conflicts. We have tools and funding available to address those concerns, not enough, but we have those, without undermining the progress we've made to recover this iconic species. So I urge my colleagues to vote no on H.R. 845, and I yield back.